There are nights history forgets. Nights that slip between the cracks of headlines and politics. But sometimes those forgotten nights are the ones that decide if we live or vanish. For years, I've researched stories that never made the front page. Accidents, glitches, and near misses that could have ended everything. But none haunt me more than the one that happened on September 26, 1983. A night when the world came seconds away from nuclear extinction, and no one even knew. The Cold War was at its peak. The US and the Soviet Union had enough nuclear weapons to destroy the planet dozens of times over. All it would take was one false move, one misunderstood signal to light the fuse. That night, deep inside a secret Soviet bunker just outside Moscow, a man named Stanislav Petrov sat before a glowing console. His job was simple and terrifying. He was to monitor the early warning system that detected American nuclear launches, and if it ever flashed red, he had to report it immediately. If he made that call, it would trigger the Soviet retaliation. Thousands of missiles, millions of lives. Game over. Low bass note, sound of distant alarm. At 12:15 a.m., the alarm went off. On the screen, a single red dot. A missile launched from the United States, heading straight toward the Soviet Union. The computer blared a warning. Missile launch detected. Petrov froze. He had seconds to decide. The siren didn't scream like in the movies. It wailed low, almost human. A sound that crawled into your chest and stayed there. Inside the command center, the red bulbs began to spin, throwing long shadows across the concrete walls. I've seen footage of that bunker now. Peeling paint, cables like veins, the kind of place that hums even when no one speaks. That night, Petrov's hand hovered above the phone that would connect him to the highest Soviet command. The computer screen blinked again. A second missile, then a third, then 5. The algorithm screamed that America had launched a nuclear first strike. 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles, each armed with warheads strong enough to vaporize entire cities. Petrov's training was clear. Report the attack. Let command confirm. Then launch everything in return. It was not a decision for humans anymore, it was a protocol. But Petrov was human. He felt the air thickening with fear, saw the younger officers glancing at him for orders. He remembered his wife at home, the way she'd kissed him before work. He thought of his children asleep in their small apartment. And he hesitated. Cut to black and white archive of Cold War drills. A soft Geiger counter click fills the silence. Outside the bunker, the world carried on. People slept, trains moved, wind crossed the fields. No one knew that everything they loved now balanced on the judgment of one quiet man. Petrov looked again at the data. It showed 5 missiles. But the radar that was supposed to confirm them, it was blank. No radar hecho. No physical confirmation. Just a computer's word against his instinct. He told his crew to hold positions. He refused to report the launch. If he was wrong, his hesitation would doom the Soviet Union. If he was right, he would save the world, and no one would ever know. The clock on the wall ticked like a bomb. Each second felt heavier than the last. Petrov waited. He counted 1 minute, 2, 3, time enough for American warheads to have reached the horizon. But the Earth stayed still. No detonations. No radar confirmation. Only the pulse of machines, the sweat on his palms. The younger officers started whispering. What if you're wrong? What if it's real? He didn't answer. He just stared at the numbers, the lines, the empty radar. Then silence. The alert cleared itself. No missiles. No war. A computer glitch. Later, they discovered sunlight had reflected off high-altitude clouds and tricked the satellite sensors into reading it as a missile launch. A trick of light, that's all. A beam of sunlight almost started World War III. He wrote in his logbook, "Alarm system error." Simple words hiding a miracle. When his shift ended, he walked home through early morning fog. Moscow was quiet, unaware it had just survived the apocalypse. He wrote in his logbook, "Alarm system error." Simple words, hiding a miracle. When his shift ended, he walked home through early morning fog. Moscow was quiet, unaware it had just survived the apocalypse. Petrov expected praise. Instead, he was reprimanded. He had broken protocol. The Soviet system didn't reward hesitation, it rewarded obedience. He was ordered not to speak of the event. The incident was classified. He returned to his small apartment, his life suddenly smaller. He never told his wife what really happened that night. He just said, "I made a decision." Years later, after the Soviet Union collapsed, the story leaked through declassified files. By then, his wife had died. He lived alone in a modest flat, surviving on a small pension. Journalists came. They asked him if he felt like a hero. He said, "No. I was just at the right place at the right time." But that's not true, is it? Luck may have placed him there, but courage kept his hand off the phone. Imagine 5 missiles on a Soviet radar. If Petrov had called it in, nuclear command would have responded within minutes. The retaliation plan, Operation Raduga, involved launching hundreds of warheads toward U.S. silos, cities, and bases in Europe. NATO's early warning systems would have detected it instantly. American commanders, bound by their own protocols, would have fired back. Within 30 minutes, half the northern hemisphere would have burned. There would have been no time for diplomacy, no red phone call, no second thoughts. Petrov's quiet doubt was the only firewall between civilization and its ashes. Yet while he kept the peace, the world kept spinning in ignorance. Cold War leaders trading threats, scientists building bigger bombs, children practicing duck and cover. History didn't pause to thank him. But maybe that's the point, we don't thank people for disasters that never happened. The bunker had been abandoned. Peeling paint, rusted consoles, dust dancing in shafts of light. Standing there, I realized something. Humanity's survival often depends not on systems or science, but on the fragile intuition of someone under fluorescent lights at 2 a.m. Petrov's story isn't just about the Cold War. It's about the weight of conscience, the audacity to question perfection in a world built on rules. In that silence, I thought of every other near-miss. The Cuban Missile Crisis, the Titan II explosion in Arkansas, the Chelyabinsk meteor, the pandemics that almost erased us. In 2013, 30 years after Petrov's decision, another flash of light cut across the Russian sky. A meteor exploding over Chelyabinsk. Windows shattered. 1,000 people were injured. For a brief moment, global sensors mistook it for a missile launch. But within minutes, scientists confirmed it was only a rock from space. Only, when I saw the footage, a bright white streak tearing across the horizon, I thought of Petrov again. How fragile our safety is. Petrov died in 2017. There were no state funerals, no monuments, no headlines. A small group of journalists and filmmakers learned of his death months later. The world moved on, new conflicts, new fears. But every satellite orbiting above us, every peaceful sunrise since 1983, owes something to the man who hesitated. I often wonder if he knew. If, sitting alone in his apartment, he understood that billions of lives continued because he chose doubt over duty. When people ask me what the story means, I tell them this. The day Earth nearly died wasn't saved by technology. It was saved by humanity. A whisper of intuition. A flicker of conscience. A heartbeat that said, wait. So the next time you look at the stars, remember, there was a night long ago when the world almost ended. And nobody told you, because one man didn't believe a machine. Thanks for watching Smiling Face with Smiling Eyes.